there's a formula to it. A very simple formula. Everybody's a suspect. It's a statement on modern society. Ooh, ain't modern society awful?
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Hello and welcome back to the Cabin Night Podcast. I'm Jay.
I'm James.
I'm Rob.
And for this episode we're going to be discussing albums. And
Stop being sweaty on my object.
important albums, but with the interesting, what's the word where you add something onto it?
Caveat?
Stipulation in America, for our American friends, where they are, where that album relates to where you were in your life. So an album, essentially, that reminds you of a special era of your life. But before we get into that, we'd like to invite you to grab a drink. Make yourselves comfortable and enjoy the discussion.
You got there in the end, well done.
Mind went blank there.
It's been a long, hot day.
It's been a very long day. So, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be picking 3 albums each, and each one is going to relate to either a special moment in your life or an album that's got a meaning of significance to you. So, who would like to start? Don't all jump at once.
My 3 were very, very easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've kind of picked one in the first 10 years of my life, maybe 11 years, and then one in the 10s to middle 20s, and then one like in older life. So all 3 of mine, well, certainly 2 of them, are formative albums. So my first one, it was a very close toss-up between 2 of them. One came out in 94, one came out in 95. I would have been 10 and 11 when those 2 albums came out. I'm going to go with the first one that came out in 1994. And probably will be no surprise based on the stuff I've said before, is Oasis Definitely Maybe.
Cool. So, yeah, I'd have taken a while to tell the doctor that was
Suspected Oasis may.
Yeah. So it was either going to be Definitely Maybe or What's the Story.
I was trying to decide which of the 2 it would be for you.
It was probably only Definitely Maybe because I was 10, and I said initially when I sort of planned it out, we were going to do 0 to 10s, 10s to 20s, and 20s to 30s. So either of those 2 albums, they're very interchangeable for me. I remember Definitely Maybe coming out. I was more attached to What's the Story, Morning Glory, but Definitely Maybe it's featured on lists of mine already. I don't skip a track.
And was that something, I know, like today when a band is in the process of sort of promoting the release, not so the pre-release stuff. Yeah. So when they're releasing singles and doing interviews and releasing all the artwork or whatever, was it the same with Oasis? Were you?
I wasn't aware of any of that. When the album came out and I listened to that.
So
stuff,
it weren't like, oh, have you heard this band? They've got a new album coming out.
No, I heard it and went,
I love this.
This is for me.
And was it your cousin or did?
No. In actual fact, my cousin and the Oasis thing formed later on. We saw them for the first time together 4 albums in. So we were 6 years after this album came out.
So what was your introduction then? Like, how did you...
I heard it on radio.
Just on radio?
Sorry, I heard it on radio.
Old school?
Old school. I mean, I'm old, but you know. Yeah, I heard it on radio. I think the first song I heard was either Shaker Maker or Cigarettes and Alcohol. 2 very different songs. Cigarettes and Alcohol is basically a T-Rex rip-off. There's no basically about it, it's a T-Rex rip-off. Shaker Maker kind of rips off the old Coca-Cola advert. If you remember the old I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing.
Oh, yeah.
It rips that off, basically. So there were 2 very ripped off songs that either of which I heard first. There is a sentimental reason to that being the album now. When my cousin died, the song he had as he was going to be cremated was "Live Forever," which is one of the biggest singles off that. And in the video to that song, they bury their old drummer because he recorded the album but wasn't doing anything else. They didn't like him, so he wasn't doing it. So in the video To Live Forever, they actually bury the drummer, Tony McCarroll. They bury him, and then
He's not dead.
he's not dead. They just bury him, and then at the end he grabs his drumsticks and pulls them underground.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite a depressing video. And then they got Alan White in, who then took off for the longest portion of the drum before they got Zach Starkey and Ringo Starr's son. They had Chris Sharrock in between those two as well. So yeah, there's a bit of sentimentality to it now, but still for me, it was the start of me going, this pop shit's all right, but there's
something heavier.
There's more to life.
There's
somewhere.
more. I like this guitar stuff. This guitar stuff that's happening. I like it, and then from that, all right. Again, still by no means metal. I found Blur, Bon Jovi, and XS. I moved more into the rock vein from then, really. So yeah, definitely.
Good gateway, but also a solid introduction.
Yeah. I mean, first album. So I've been into Oasis since the beginning. I can't say I haven't, because I have. Every album I've bought, and if they were to get together tomorrow and release an album and tour, I would be there with bells and whistles, and I'd buy a special edition, I'd buy VIP tickets, I'd be going to that. A lot of that would be for my cousin, but still, I like him. If he was still here, it wouldn't change anything. I'd still do all the same things. It just would be going together. So, yeah, definitely maybe my first.
I suppose my first pick, again, an album I've talked about before on this very podcast, would be Believe by Disturbed. Admittedly, it's not their best album. I think it should rank higher in the Cabinet's estimations, but
it doesn't.
But it didn't, though, did it?
It didn't.
No, but
It's a lot lower because it's not a thing. Anyway,
let's leave sore points alone. But no, it's an album that means a lot to me. It's the album that I first started to get into the heavier music, because I just like a little bit of rock and a little bit of sort of not necessarily metal, but sort of mainstream, sort of heavy stuff, as it were. But yeah, it was the first album that I properly listened to. I was like, yeah, I can get into this. And like, no one else I knew who Disturbed was at that point, so they were like my band as well. So no one else knew who they were. So it's like, yeah, I've got ownership over this. This is my.
it was like that with Oasis. Everybody found them on What's the Story?
Yeah.
I mean, I know they don't release an album Disturbed by the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of got that same. Not many people knew who they were until What's the Story came out.
So I was like, yeah, this is my thing. And just at the time, 'cause I remember first hearing Prayer for the first time and just being blown away by it. And just loving sort of the imagery.
Scuzz TVs are a lot to answer.
It was actually Kerrang. It was.
They were much of a muchness, weren't they? Scuzz was marginally better, I suppose.
I think in hindsight, yeah. I think
Scuzz didn't have as much shit in between. Scuzz was generally a little bit.
Kerrang tend to be a bit more hit and miss with what he would play. But yeah, I remember just loving the imagery in the video, just the sound he was making.
I do like the video of Prayer where he's walking down the street and he's just blowing up around him.
And it's just sort of that sort of the themes and that and everything that album's dealing with. I just connected with pretty quickly, and yeah, we're not that type of podcast. But where was I know? I mean, what, it was 2002 it came out, so I was 12, 13 when that album.
None of my albums are particularly. I was in an okay place when they all came out. It was just that. I mean, I know you've said before that you weren't necessarily.
Yeah, I know. Sort of with hindsight, probably over dramatising it slightly, but
you felt it.
Yeah,
whatever it was.
At the time, I wasn't very happy, and I wasn't. I wasn't in a good place mentally, but yeah, so that album really helped me sort of think about things and kind of go, yeah, okay. I have an outlet now.
There's other people.
Yeah, other people. Yeah, other people have. In David Draper's case, had much worse times. Let's be honest. He's not had a good hand in life. But yeah, so sort of, I was finding that outlet for how I was feeling and finding that outlet for my emotions and things like that. Was like, yeah, okay, I can do it. And I played that album to death. If that was a cassette, it'd have been worn out. Yeah. If that was vinyl, all the grooves would have gone.
I'm on my 4th Black album.
Did you just keep smashing them up, going, it's better than Enter Sandman?
I kept burning them because they sold out, man, with the videos and stuff. So.
That's one though, isn't it?
It is one, yeah.
You're a bit late to that party. But yeah, I think I know what I won't dwell on it, but I know you two aren't a massive fan of that album. Believe you're not a massive fan, but I feel like it's an album that's a lot deeper than you realise, and I'm not saying it's like, oh, it's a really thinky album, man. You need to get into the suit. It's fucking not. But yeah, I just feel what it's doing and the themes it's playing with. While they did darker, they did heavier themes. I just, I think Steve people give it credit.
But at the end of the day, if you attached to it for whatever reason, if you were feeling particularly down and it helped you, if you were feeling particularly happy and it helped you be more happy,
Was it as simple as that? You saw Prey as well on Prey.
I saw
just like, I need to check these out.
Yeah, I need to check them out, and the album hadn't been released, or at least I hadn't got it by that point.
No,
there was
Prayer was the first single.
Prayer was the first. I think they released Prayer, then the album came out, and then they released Remember. If I remember right.
And then Liberate was the
Liberate
last.
was later on. So I didn't. So there was no back in the old days. There was no Spotify. There was no YouTube. No. You had to just wait. So if you didn't have the album, you had to
wait for radio or Scuzz and then go and buy the fucking thing.
So I remember loving Prayer and going, and then when Remember came out, I was like, yep. This is the band I want. This is the band I want to connect with.
Yeah.
Again, just what the dark themes and stuff it was dealing with, and I was like, I really connected with that. But yeah, it's a fucking great album. Fuck you two. It's a fucking great album.
I don't know what you're referring to, James.
I mean, I don't know what order these episodes are coming out in, but if the Disturbed album ranking episode isn't out yet, then
spoiler alert.
We have ranked Disturbed.
Yeah.
And Believe is not a good
Screw
album.
James of his feelings.
We don't care how upset he was at the time.
Still upset.
So my first pick, it really does sort of opens my introduction to metal.
It's the front cover.
If you like. You'll have heard me say it before. It's certainly not the last time I'm going to say it, but it's I believe it's the greatest album of our generation. And although Trivium were the introduction to
I know what this might be.
the album I'm going for is by a band who are called Machine Head. Yeah. The album is called The Blackening. I maintain that it is the greatest album of our generation. Yeah, in terms of where I was, like I say, I was just getting into metal, so everything was fun and exciting, even if I didn't particularly like it. So when I was hearing more extreme stuff, there was certainly stuff that I heard and I was like, it's probably a bit advanced for me. That The Blackening wasn't one of them. So I think around the time that I was just getting into Trivium, Aesthetics of Hate.
The Blackening's pretty fucking extreme if you're just getting in.
Yeah.
It's not like an easily fucking accessible album.
I mean, to be fair, it's the first Machine Head album I listened to.
The first Machine Head album I listened to was Supercharger. The second one was Through the Ashes and Empire, which is my favourite album.
So the Aesthetics of Hate video would do it rounds on Scuzz and Kerrang, and I'd heard that, and I remember, to be fair, not being massively sold, because the first time I heard it I was like, I like it, I really like it, but it goes on a bit.
Well, that's the Dimebag tribute, isn't it?
Yeah, it just goes on a
Side
bit.
of a Bullet by Nickelback.
And then when I found out that Aesthetics of Hate was actually one of the shortest songs on the album, I was like, oh, that is interesting. And then bought The Blackening, and I think Clenching the Fists, there's a lot of songs out there. I mean, Absolute Radio have got a show which they do called, they call themselves the Home of the Long Play, because they dedicate an hour or however long it is.
Planet Rock
weekly,
do the same thing.
where they play songs that are over 10
They call
minutes.
it a long play or something like that.
Yeah. And but Clenching the Fists, to me, like I said, there's a lot of those songs where even if you like the song, I don't know, Iowa, for example, or maybe Rime of the Ancient Mariner, not that one, because that's fantastic and I'll hear nothing against it, but a lot of prog stuff you can listen to and it's like, you could tune out and then back in.
Yeah, I think playing most prog stuff, a lot of them tune out and then come back in again. Yeah,
but Clenching the Fists of Dissent is not one of them.
No.
That is fantastic start to finish, and when they were opening with that as part of Blackening tour, which they toured extensively for like 4 years, or 3 or 4 years.
Because Locust didn't come out till 2011, 12.
I was at university when that came out.
Yeah.
I mean, just looking at the album list, the first 4 songs, I ain't got a problem with them.
So
Pledge in the Fist, Beautiful Morning, Aesthetic is Right, and Now I Lay Thee Down.
all great. songs.
All four of them. I mean, if that was the EP album version of that, I'm all good.
But then you got just Halo and
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
Wolves.
Out of the album, that's the one I'm not kind of about Wolves. It's still a good song, but out of the other 7.
I weren't as keen on Halo. Or Farewell to Arms.
Oh no, Farewell to Arms.
It just came. The album just came at a time when it was all so new and exciting to me, and that's why it's got its place on the list.
Well, there you go. Doesn't matter then, does it? Again, with these, it doesn't matter why they're there.
You
They
just
are
need to
there because they are
Tell
there.
me why. That's all I want to know.
Yeah, they are there. I went first.
Oh,
You
okay.
go first.
Right, I'm going to go a bit left field or right field or upfield or downfield, whichever way the field is going.
The opposite to whichever the field is going.
Yeah, that's true. That'll do. Underfield, that'll do. And I'm picking, and I don't think it will actually be that much of a surprise now I said that, I'm picking the Dark Knight soundtrack.
It's not a surprise.
No, I don't think it will be.
You have
actually.
mentioned that before.
I have. Yeah, when we did the albums that define us, I think I said the Inception one. But I think for like ones that actually mean more to me and things like that, I go for the Dark Knight. Because I remember that being the first film where I loved everything about it. I loved how it was shot. I loved the actors. I loved the story. I loved everything about it. And the music was such an integral part. It was all one thing. It was all one coherent piece. And just the soundtrack I thought was phenomenal. It's one of the first time. It's the first time I can remember off the top of my head at least of me going out and going, I need to buy that soundtrack. I need to hear that music.
Have never been.
That's the one that made me go, I need to listen to more.
I had the Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs soundtrack,
But they were songs, weren't
but
they?
they were songs.
Yeah,
they weren't scores. They
no,
weren't.
The score to the Dark Knight, I think.
They were songs from that film.
Yeah.
As such.
You know, it's.
I've got a Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2 score, which won't surprise. But I've got them
Because they're Ghostbusters.
because it's Ghostbusters.
Not because, yeah.
Not particularly because I like it as such. So yeah, I've never been bothered about sound. Emma's a big soundtrack.
No, it was just because it was the first time when I was like, oh no, this music is the music for that. I was coming out going, I remember that music for that bit. And it was the first time I really got into it, and now I really like soundtracks and I listen to quite a few, but that was the first one that I was like, yeah, this is good. This is brilliant. I listen to that. I listen to that album quite a lot. Just the different emotions it can get you to feel and different images it concocts.
And is that something that is personal to you, or does it make you think of the film? When you say
I think it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I think.
Do you
I was
hear that and
gonna
think,
ask, were
oh,
you
that
gonna-
reminds me when such and such?
I mean, yeah,
happens
because
in the
the music. I've seen the film that many times as well. I know exactly when the music comes
Yeah.
Were
in.
you in a? You said that you weren't feeling particularly happy at Believe era. Were you in a happier place?
I think so, because when it came out, we were at college when Dark Knight came out, weren't we? So yeah, I think I was in a happier place. I think it's just, I just really enjoyed that album, and it opened up that doorway to finding more music like that. I think is why that album means so much to me.
So it's slightly unusual, this one, but I'd argue that it counts still. But this is
Does it mean a lot to you?
it does.
Then it counts.
It is a compilation album.
Ooh.
Oh, controversial.
Mothership, Led Zeppelin.
Okay.
So
That does a bit creaky.
It is. It's a lot creaky, I would say.
again, it came out at a time when so we was at uni, I think. It was that first year of uni when we spent a lot of time with Jim and Leanne.
I could tell you because we were around at that point.
2007, I think,
We were
when it
self.
came
Yeah, I'm not on about you. I'm on about.
Oh, fuck you then.
Yeah, you weren't part of this. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
On
well,
this
no,
occasion, you weren't there.
I'll tell you what, you weren't part of any of mine, so fuck you.
No, we went walking a lot with Jim and Leanne, and we went to Edinburgh and camped, and we did a lot of Jim's personality and the path he was leading in life was quite infectious.
Is this Jim who we spoke about before on the podcast?
This is
We have spoken about Jimmy before.
Yeah,
on the podcast.
we've ranked his album, I believe.
It was one of my albums of the year in 2021.
But we also worked with Jim for a short while when he worked at our work as well. But yeah, so his path in life and the way he was going was quite infectious. It was quite unassuming, but defined in what he was doing, in the sense that he was very much, for want of a better way of putting it, leading a very hippie lifestyle, very very much about nature and walking and just chilling and good times and what have you.
There's not a lot wrong with that, to be fair.
No, I remember camping a lot during that time. I remember walking in beautiful locations a lot during that time. And Led Zeppelin was the soundtrack to that. I'd listened to Led Zeppelin to a degree quite a bit before that, but that was the album that really sort of put a stamp on it, really, for me, was that album. Just a very, again, another very happy time in my life. So I remember.
Like I said, none of mine are particularly unhappy times in my life. My next album is. I've struggled between 3 albums on this one. They were the albums that started me on the rock and metal. Really started me on the rock and metal path of life. The 3 albums are Green Day, Dookie, Foo Fighters, Nothing Left to Lose, and the Black Album by Metallica. In that order, they were the albums. So I quickly progressed from the light pop punky stuff to Metallica and I found Metallica and went, this is...
You have arrived at your destination.
This is... yeah, I'm sold now, that's it, I'm here. I'm good with where I've landed. But, having said that, I think out of those 3, while Dookie was the first album I listened to that started me on the progression, because my ex-girlfriend got me into, when I was at school, she got me into Green Day, was that was it. I was like, so you like this is really cool, I really like this, I can see me liking more of this. And Metallica was where I ended up. I think the next album that I'm going to pick is Foo Fighters, Nothing Left to Lose, because it was the first rock and metal album that I latched onto.
Yeah.
That was out at that point.
So what was on that album? What?
There's Nothing Left to Lose is Breakout, Learn to Fly, Aurora, Next Year.
Okay.
There's hang on.
Quite some sizable tracks on there. Then.
Yeah. It was the one after Colour and the Shape, which is now my favourite Foo Fighters album, but still.
Yeah.
Learn to Fly, again, is obviously Stacked Actors, Breakout, Gimme Stitches, Learn to Fly, Generator, Aurora, Living Skin, Next Year, Headwires, Ain't It the Life, MIA. All those songs, that was an album that, although I was newly into rock and metal, I didn't skip a track. There was not one. It could have featured in, if we'd have done more albums, 4 albums that define us, that would have been in there. But it came out on November the 2nd, 1999, and I think we got together possibly about 2 months before that. Yeah, it was the first album that I latched onto that had come out in my time of liking this sort of music. Foo Fighters have always been one of them, a bit of a, not a polarising band, but a band that I've had affinity to, but kind of now, more so since Taylor Hawkins died, but I only want to see him at a certain era. I want to see him up to In Your Honour album. I don't want to see an era past that particular. Although Echoes, Grace, Patience and Silence came after that with Pretender and all that sort of stuff. That, to me, from Foo Fighters through Colour and the Shape, Nothing Left to Lose, One by One, In Your Honour, that is the golden era of Foo Fighters for me. And while they aren't, I mean, again, so surprisingly, there isn't a thrash album or a Metallica album that features in this list. Metallica would have featured, but it had been out for a long portion of time before I got into it. Both the first 2 albums that I've picked, I was into at the point of release.
Okay.
Foo Fighters. Emma did pick Metallica for that one, and I said, I'm really torn between 3. Dookie had been out since 1991, and it was 1999 when I got into it. Not that it's not 1994. Sorry, not that it's a bad album. That was just the first one that I latched onto, and it was kind of cool to bring this to my alternative rock and metal girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
If you listen to this, you like this, but if you listen to this, this is really cool. I like this. It might not be cool to her. She might have gone, it's fucking shit, whatever. It's not this what I like, but it was cool to me to bring this thing that I'd found, this rock and metal album, or rock album, whatever, that I'd found that was my own. Like you said with Believe, none of your friends really liked it, so it's just
it was mine. Yours. Yeah.
I don't feel like ownership over Foo Fighters now, but I did then. I really did then. So yeah, Learn to Fly. Oh, There's Nothing Left to Lose by Foo Fighters.
Cool. Yeah, it was a good album actually. I do like. It's probably got my favourite songs on there. We Learn to Fly and Heroes on there. But
Breakout. My Hero's the one before. My Hero is my favourite Foo Fighters.
cool.
Which is the now one they dedicate to Travis.
Travis?
Taylor. Sorry, Taylor.
Two Thugs Travis.
He's in Blink-182, didn't
Ah.
he? Again, I could have picked a Blink album, but I did. That one means more to me.
So my last album is one that's had a bit of airtime in a very recent episode, potentially, depending on release order. This is an album by Trivium called Silence in the Snow, released in 2015.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I was living in London with Becky at the time. We were living at Muswell Hill, and I remember, because on the back of Vengeance Falls just being really
good and like in top 3 of albums kind of thing.
It's only way it's getting into top 3 is if we forget that it's on the list and we accidentally put it there. On the back of Vengeance Falls, which I didn't enjoy, I didn't have like massively high hopes, especially seeing as in the interviews they were saying, it's aggressive but it's clean sung through, but we think it's going to be. We think you're going to think it's more aggressive, regardless of that. And so yeah, hopes weren't high. And then I remember very specifically, Becky were out at work. She was due back, and I was cooking tea in our tiny little studio flat at Muswell Hill. And I got it on my little Bluetooth speaker, and I just it really underlines everything I loved about living in London, because it's feeling good. I was working at Wetherspoons and I was cooking. I always enjoy doing that. Becky was due home and all the rest of it. So I just and specifically the song Ghost That's Haunting You, I remember that playing when Becky came in and just turning to her and being like, it's a good album actually, it's not bad. I remember Meliora come out around the same time, so that was on my list, as was Immortalised by Disturbed. So they were all albums
Immortalised was
a comeback.
The new, the comeback.
So it was all around that time where I got some of my favourite bands releasing new music, but that's the one that sticks out every time. Just as it's just generally being in a very happy place, happy with life, happy with work, happy with everything had aligned. I couldn't fail to. Probably would have felt the same way about Vengeance Falls if that's the one. If as you thought, they'd been released the other way around.
Yeah, in my head I just got the other way around. Yeah.
But I remember working at Co-op when Vengeance Falls were released, and that weren't a good time, really. So yeah, that would be my last album that defines an era for me.
Mine, I just want to check the year. I think was 2007. Much like the album before, There's Nothing Left to Lose by the Foo Fighters, it was a band that I got into that I found myself, wasn't influenced in any way by it, and I've since tried to push it on many, many people. Some are bothered, some aren't. Blackstone Cherry, the first Blackstone Cherry album, released in 2006. So I was with my girlfriend before Emma. We split up in 2007. But a lot of the songs on that album defined who I was when we split up. So she left me, which in theory was sorry. She wasn't the nicest person to me, and I left her, which in theory is a bad time. But when you soundtrack it with good songs, good music, you kind of forget that.
Brings you out of it.
Yeah. So there are 2 songs in particular on that album which would always feature in any playlist I ever make. One is Rolling On, which to me epitomised because one of the line goes, like the clouds I'm rolling on. Basically, I'm beyond you and I've moved on to the next thing, whatever the next era of my life is. I've moved on. So that one, and then the other one, Hello High Water, was another one that was very similar. It seemed to. I'm moving on again. I'm getting over this. It was also a band that when me and Emma got together, I said, "Oh, I like Blackstone Cherry." She's like, "Oh, who are they? What do they do?" And I said, oh, well, you need to check out this album. And in 2008, Download, before me and Emma met in 2007 at Download. We spent a lot of time together in 2008, and we got together just after Download in 2008, by which point I was single. And I said I'd like Blackstone Cherry, and they were playing that year, which I think their second album had already come out, which was called Folklore and Superstition, which came out... Oh no, they were playing songs off that album.
That hadn't been out. It hasn't actually come out.
It hadn't quite come out till August.
Right.
And Emma downloaded some tracks, found some tracks, and listened to them. So she, through me, she liked to listen to them. So it was like something I brought to her. We had a lot of bands in common that we liked. The time we both liked Thunder, we both liked Incubus. There were a lot of bands that we had in common, but she brought bands to me and I brought bands to her. So like I never really listened to Cradle of Filth other than the tracks that had been on Skulls or Kerrang, because I'd not got anybody to show me the way. And Emma liked Cradle of Filth. So I said, right, well, you show me this, and for want of a better word, you show me yours and I'll show you mine.
It's always worked through that line as well, isn't it?
Which we did a little bit later on. But yeah, so we shared bands, and it was cool because both me and Emma are very passionate about things. By no means are they the same things, but we are both very passionate people about the things we like. She likes Tim Burton, Neil Gaiman. I don't, but I appreciate the passion. So for me to bring Blackstone Cherry and her to bring things to me was a nice meeting point. So although it came out 2 years previous to me and Emma getting together, and I was still with somebody else at the time, it kind of reminded me of that transitional period and getting with Emma at the same time. So Blackstone Cherry.
Is that one? Is that Big Train on it as well?
Lonely Train.
Lonely Train, not Big. It is Big Train. It starts with Big Train.
It does.
Big Train.
Yeah. It does actually start with Big Train, but it's Lonely
Lonely
Train.
Train. That's a good song. It's a good song.
It's got Shape of Things,
Blind Man?
cover. Blind Man's off the second album, which is...
Oh, is it?
Blind Man's off Folklore and Superstition. Rain Wizard is off that one. Maybe Someday, which is... You know, like when... it's possibly an episode I may want to do in the future on here where we pick the one song that defines that band. Whatever band that may be. So you've got to pick the one Trivium song that best defines
Everything
that
they do.
band. Maybe Someday is possibly that song for Blackstone Cherry for me.
Okay. That could be a fun episode for the future. Keep listening, listeners.
So yeah,
Or The World Time Works. You may have already heard that episode. If you're not sure, just stay.
we record a lot at once.
Listen,
Please listen, please. Like, follow, subscribe on every social media page going.
Yes.
yeah. While we're on the subject of social media, though, if you do have an album that that maybe means something similar to you as what our albums have meant to us, and you want to hop up there on the old SM platforms and let us know about it, that'd be good. Yeah, we'd like to hear what you think as well.
All right to us the old-fashioned way at PO Box 479, Shepherd's Bush, care of the Undertaker.
We don't have a PO box. If you'd not get.
Does anyone have a PO Box anymore? Do they still exist?
Probably some people do.
Write to us and let us know if you have a PO Box. So I'm going to sort of flip what I said about the first one, my first album, because obviously I said when Believe came out, I wasn't in.
Please, sir, I know what it is.
I know what it is.
Okay, yeah, it's not the most ambiguous of choices, but it is of course Cannibal Corpse, and
Yes, that's exactly what I thought it was.
Two
exactly,
Exactly what I
good
thought it was
time.
going to be.
No, it's prequel by Ghost. It's prequel by Ghost.
I was being serious. I thought it was Carol Corpse. That was going to be my guess.
It's simply because it's the only album that I can listen to and pinpoint exactly where I was, and it reminds me of such a specific place. And the reasons behind this album a lot at this point, are a very middle class reason of
And I'm sure I've been on the podcast
Yeah.
already, but let's hear it again. Come on, bring it out.
My iPod died because of ham.
Ham juice.
Ham sweat. Ham juice. So we were having I'll start at the beginning. So me and my now wife were on our honeymoon in Lake Garda, and we were going to Venice for the day. And in the morning, we were in the hotel, and in the morning, you're meant to pick your evening meal. So it's one of those hotels that what do you want tonight? So, and I get why hotels do. It's also quite nice. I don't know what I want in 12 hours time. Yeah,
I might be pissed by then. I might want a pizza.
Exactly. So said, what do you want for the evening meal? And we said, oh, we're not actually here for the evening meal tonight because we were paying for half board.
Yeah.
So we're not actually here for an evening meal tonight because we've got an evening trip to Venice. And they went, oh, well, stay there. You've paid for food, so let us do you a pack up. So the waiter disappeared and came back with...
Can you bring me all the beer possible, please?
He came back with a wonderful lunch, continental lunch, some bread, some really nice breads, some really nice meats, some cheese, some fruit. I think a couple of protein bars and stuff like that. Really, really nice lunch. Really, really good. So I just shoved it all in my backpack. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to Italy in the summer, but...
much like this cabin.
Much like this sauna of a cabin we're in right now. It's a rather warm place to be. So we were walking around Venice and, going to the Alto Bridge and going, oh, well, there it is. And, all that, walking around, getting lost and spending hours trying to find very specific Venetian masks that Hay knew exactly which ones she wanted but didn't know until she saw them. So we were having a good time. These ones, no, I'm not sure what those ones are. Okay, on to the next one. And then deciding 6 hours later, when we had about an hour to get back before the shops closed, oh no, I want to go back to that shop we found when we did this. So, right, so we had to retrace all our steps around Venice trying to find it again. And during the course of the day, it got very, very warm. So the meat had sweated, basically, and got into the iPod. So my iPod died a death. So my iPod died a very middle-class death by a ham sweat.
Death by ham juice.
Death by ham juice.
Does anybody still own an iPod?
I do. I still use my iPod.
Oh, I don't.
I generally still use my iPod. Not as often as I use my phone.
Then again, I am an Apple wanker and moved to
You are an
Apple,
Apple wanker.
There you go. So I've got my iPod.
Well, there's some albums I listen to that aren't on Spotify,
Yeah. I've saved everything on my hard drive that I want to listen to from my iTunes. But, yeah, I've got rid of my iPod.
But because I pre-ordered the album through Amazon, so just before I went on honeymoon, rather, Prequel by Ghost had come out, and I hadn't had time. I had put it onto my iPod, but I hadn't listened to it that much. But because I pre-ordered it through Amazon, I was entitled to a free download through Amazon. So I only had my phone now, so my iPod had died. I thought, well, what have I got on Amazon Music? Or the only thing I really had was Prequel by Ghost. I thought, well, I'll download that. I had to listen to it religiously for the rest of the holiday, and just the songs just remind me of a really happy time.
Yeah.
Remember sitting by the pool.
I'm glad you said happy because you just got married. I'm glad you said happy.
Yeah. It was a traumatic time. No.
I don't remember it nicely. Ghost was the only thing to keep me happy in that time.
So I remember vividly sat.
Haley, come and listen to this.
Sat by the pool in Lake Garda, glorious sunshine, bar just there, reading a book, music on. I was like, yeah, this is good. Life
is good.
I could spend my life doing this. This is actually quite a nice place to be. Because Garda's a phenomenal place to go. It's absolutely stunning part of Italy, part of the world. But yeah, so it just reminds me of happy times. I think, it's a nice counter to Believe. But yeah, I think it's just a fantastic album.
Is there? I thought about this after we because I could have probably done 5. You see, is there any honourable mentions that anybody's got?
I've already honourably mentioned mine with Immortalised and the other album I mentioned.
The Trivium. No, you said Trivium.
Vengeance Falls.
Nope.
Your favourite Trivium album, Vengeance Falls.
Oh, Ghost, Meliora.
Ghost, yeah. Okay. I've got one which is much on the similar vein of your Mothership. It was Buddy Holly's story. Wasn't particularly a happy time when I think back about it, but I was young and didn't really understand what it meant. So we had a caravan at Inglemells.
I can see why it was a bad time.
We used to spend pretty much all the summer there. While we were there, my granddad had a stroke, and I was young and didn't understand what that meant. I didn't understand how serious it was. So he went to hospital at Boston, and he stayed pretty much the whole summer. I can't remember what year it was. I really can't even remember what year it was. But I'd gone around Inglemells Market and bought Buddy Holly Story cassette. And whenever we went, because my mum stayed at the caravan for the whole summer, so she would go and visit my granddad quicker, because he were only at Boston, which is like the next major town along from Skeg. So she used to drive to him daily. And me and my dad used to come at weekends. And all I remember is driving to Skeg and then driving from Skeg to Boston, listening to Buddy Holly. So, wasn't particularly happy time thinking back because my granddad was in a terrible state. He had quite a major stroke. He survived that. He lived till 1995, but he was in hospital, and it wasn't very well after that. Yeah. For me, it was some of the happiest times. Like listening to music that I liked, driving with my mum and my dad. We went to caravan every weekend. We did this, we did that. So, although the undertones of what I was doing was quite sad, it was quite a nice time listening to Buddy Holly.
It's weird because I do look back on hard times, tough times, fondly.
Yeah, when we were talking about this, I don't have an album when I thought, you know what, or should I say, there hasn't been an album that's come out when I've been feeling particular. I'm not bothered. I've been antidepressants for 6 years now. I'm not bothered. I will talk about it. I will help anybody that needs to talk about it. There hasn't been an album when I've been feeling particular low that's come out and I've gone, this has helped me.
Okay.
Music does help in general, but there hasn't been one where that's just gone.
Yeah, that's the album. That's the one. Yeah.
It's just what it is, and that's not that I can't be helped. I can be helped, but there's just not been that thing that's dragged me out. Music in general does it?
I don't say it necessarily ever does bring you out of it. It just helps you through it.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I mean. But there's not been one that I've gone, oh, this has really helped.
Yeah.
There's been lots of music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I recently saw something on one of the anxiety groups that I follow on Facebook, and it said one of the coping mechanisms for somebody with anxiety is rewatching things that you liked. And in recent time, I've rewatched Red Dwarf, Only Fools and Horses, How I Met Your Mother, The Ranch, Life on Mars, and I'm rewatching Ashes to Ashes. Oh, 2.5 Men, and as well, things that made you happy at one point, you kind of rewatch them, and I just think, oh, am I doing that because I like this, or am I doing it? It brought it out after I'd watched all these things. I kind of went, oh, am I watching it because of that, or am I watching it because I like it?
You want to watch it, yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, yeah.
I don't think I don't know if I do have any honourable mentions, but yeah, I get what you're saying though about not music and being there. I think yeah.
But like you said with Lee, you were feeling particularly down, and it helped you. There hasn't been that one.
Yeah.
That's kind of not pulled me out, but got me through something.
I'd never heard music like that before.
Yeah.
I'd never heard anything.
I think
that,
it's
I know it's not, but
I'd
never heard anything that heavy before.
Yeah.
So I know it's not that heavy, but at the time I'd never heard anything that heavy before.
It's heavy if you've only listened to X, Y, and Z, and then you find that and you go, fucking hell, what's this shit? It's like, that's why I said to you about the Machine Head. Yeah. You said you weren't listening to heavy stuff or extreme stuff. Machine Head, Black Hidden is pretty fucking extreme at the time.
Yeah.
For you just to be getting into metal and for you to latch on to that. So, yeah.
Is it my
Your episode.
Yeah. There's nothing else really to add, is there? On that, I think we've it's given you the listeners a little insight into sort of where we were at certain points and how that relates to what is a major passion for.
And you should check these albums out.
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah, and as I've said already, if there's anything you'd like to add in terms of albums that maybe mean something to you, or compilation albums, or even individual songs, please. You know where to find us on social media. So yeah, all that's left to say is you've been great. We've been Cabin Night. Good night.